Sing that shit.
James Harden, one of the premier players in the NBA. He's virtually known as the best shooting guard in the entire NBA. We're talking about someone who puts up monster numbers during the regular season of 28, 8, and 6 and won his first MVP out of 3 tries. But let's transfer to the postseason, and you don't really see that same amount of success that he has in the regular season in the NBA postseason. So what if I told you James Harden's biggest strength is also his biggest weakness? Now, as I said before, James Harden is one of the best scorers and playmakers we have ever seen, but James Harden's game is built around using the high pick and roll to break apart the opponent's defense or to get matched on the opponent's worst defensive link on the perimeter. So once that happens, he has either two choices: drive to the rim or lob it to Clint Capella. But to combat that, NBA defenses typically decides to switch the pick and roll, and James Harden has to resort to isolation, which of course is James Harden's biggest strength. Last season, Harden was #1 in scoring off isolation plays, and guess who was in second place? You guessed it, Chris Paul. And once again, don't get me wrong, James Harden is a great isolation player, but doing that could only get you so far. Yeah, you could get by that during the regular season, basing the offense around his isolation plays, but once the postseason hits and as teams become more prepared with a game plan and strategy, and when they actually start to try a bit harder, that strategy becomes a bit too predictable. Not to mention, isolation plays take up a lot of energy and can leave you tired and exhausted by the end of the game, and to do that for a whole 82 game season would do a lot of work on his body and would leave him more depleted in the postseason. And that's why over the years, James Harden seems to underperform in the NBA postseason, especially in the big moments. James Harden has always shot worse from the 3 in the field in the NBA postseason, and the reason behind that is because his tactic becomes way too predictable. So teams have a game plan for it, so he has to work harder for his shots, so he shoots worse in the NBA playoffs. And I know people are gonna say, well, that's why they brought in CP3, but this strategy can do a lot more harm, especially to Chris Paul, who's an injury prone player, to be doing all those isolation plays and carrying that big of a load on the offensive end of the floor for a full 82 game season. So once again, that could leave him depleted by the postseason and be more injury prone, just like we saw last season. Also, all these isolation plays can actually be detrimental to the team as well. In a quote, Steve Kerr said, "I feel there's power in everybody touching the ball." Pause. And everybody sharing in the offense. There's nobody who's right or wrong. And I completely agree. And for some of you guys who don't understand, basically he's saying the more everybody gets to touch the ball and be more involved in the offense, the more they'll be able to find the rhythm and the better the offense will be. One example I want to use is when the Rockets missed 27 consecutive threes in Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals last season. And if you go back and look at the game footage, you notice what I've been saying.
Harden behind the screen. Harden.
They are in their grill.
Here's Harden way off.
Another foul he should have gotten.
Tucker. Deflected.
The Warriors came with a game plan, and you had James Harden isoing and taking these terrible contested long-range three-pointers, and when the Rockets are unable to depend on his isolation abilities, the whole team just falls apart. There was zero ball movement, and everybody started to take these long contested three-point shots, and the offense became stagnant, and it kind of looked like James Harden was tired by the end of the game. him isoing and taking all those contested three-pointers really ruined the offense, and that's always been the case for James Harden every single year in the postseason. When they need him the most, he's too exhausted and does not produce. And yes, I know Chris Paul was out, but I wouldn't see it being any different. You know, Chris Paul and James Harden just isoing the whole entire game while everybody just stands around. Once again, the main reason why I feel like he was out or injured is because of the heavy offensive load he carried during the season. Both him and James Harden has to stop with all the isoing. But some people don't realize how long the whole process is, or the possession, because once you get in the half-court setting, there's only about 18 seconds left on the shot clock, and when you're trying to get the right screen while the defense is trying to fight over it, might take up the whole entire shot clock. So you end up attempting to drive and kick it out to an open shooter at the last second, then they'll have to end up taking maybe a tough contested shot, or James Harden might have to ISO and also take a tough contested shot, and that's not good basketball. And fun fact, the Rockets are the #1 team in the NBA for taking long contested three-point shots. Again, like I said, you could get past that in the regular season, but as you get deeper in the postseason, it just becomes too predictable and it leads to fatigue and bad team basketball, especially in today's NBA. ISOing can only get you so far, and I don't know how long the Rockets will continue to use this strategy because it has led to regular season success, but deep in the postseason where it matters the most, it never ever seems to work. Now, time to talk about the solution. ISOing is still one of James Harden's biggest strengths, and I'm not saying he should stop doing it overall, but instead he should do it less, cut it down some, you know, be a better off-ball player, or improve on becoming a better spot-up shooter and a better team player, because the amount of times he ISOs a game is totally unnecessary. And for one, he won't always be fatigued, and for two, he won't have to carry such a big load on the offensive end of the floor, and this could benefit Chris Paul also, who's getting up there in age. Everybody will get to touch the ball and find the rhythm, and thus will lead to better basketball in theory, because James Harden and the Rockets can't keep relying on this one strategy because it becomes too predictable in the postseason. But that's just my opinion on the whole matter. I'd like to hear what you guys think in the comment section below, because once again, this is a conversation and I'll be reading a lot of the comments. But with that being said, if you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like, share, and subscribe for more NBA content, and I'll see you all later. Peace.